He says, I don't want to do any more violent pictures. I'm tired of it. I've been involved with a lot of them. He says, I'm really tired of it. I said, I know exactly where you're coming from, but read it again because I think we can make a great statement.
Clint Eastwood, known for his tough roles and even tougher opinions, has reportedly named the 6 celebrities he hates most, and the list is shocking. At 95, Clint Eastwood is no longer keeping silent, but saying his truth. These aren't strangers or distant critics. They're major names who crossed paths with Eastwood at the height of their fame. Old grudges, clashing egos, and behind-the-scenes betrayals are all part of the story. After decades of staying composed in public, why is Clint Eastwood finally calling people out now? And which 6 celebrities earned a permanent place on his hate list? Stay tuned as we reveal them all. Number 6. Leonardo DiCaprio. What could possibly make Clint Eastwood walk off his own movie set? The answer is Leonardo DiCaprio. But before we get into what happened between them, you need to understand something about Clint first. You need to know where his whole one-take philosophy actually came from. Because without that backstory, you won't get why DiCaprio drove him so crazy. So here's the thing. Before Eastwood became Hollywood's most efficient director, before he was the guy who finishes movies ahead of schedule and under budget, he learned his philosophy the hard way. Back in the 1960s, he was working under Sergio Leone on the Dollars trilogy. Those spaghetti westerns that made him famous. And Leone was this Italian director who was absolutely obsessed with perfection. Clint would stand there in the scorching Spanish desert, doing the same scene over and over and over. 40 takes, 50 takes, sometimes even 70 takes of the exact same moment. The same squint, the same draw of his gun, the same silence. For 3 entire films, this was his life. Leone truly believed that magic happened through repetition. Like, if you did something enough times, eventually you'd stumble onto something brilliant. But Clint was watching something completely different happen. He saw actors losing their edge, their instinct, their raw truth. By take 50, nobody was acting anymore. They were just robots going through the motions. Their performances weren't getting better. They were getting fake, mechanical, dead. So when Clint finally became a director himself, he made a promise. Capture the lightning in the bottle the first time, or just move on. Don't chase it. Don't overthink it. After take 3, you're not getting better performances anymore. You're just getting exhausted actors pretending to feel something they genuinely felt 2 hours ago. This wasn't just some random preference or quirky director habit. This was Clint's rebellion, his middle finger to everything Sergio Leone had taught him. And decades later, when he was 79 years old and directing J. Edgar, watching Leonardo DiCaprio demand a 7th take felt like the ultimate betrayal of everything he believed in. When J. Edgar started filming in 2010, everybody in Hollywood thought it was going to be magic. The calmest director in the business paired with the most intense actor of his generation. A dream team. But people who were actually there say it turned into a nightmare pretty fast. Just a really quiet one. From the very first day, DiCaprio showed up like he was preparing for trial. Folders full of notes. Pages and pages of historical research. Marked up FBI memos about J. Edgar Hoover. The guy had done his homework 1,000 times. Crew members said you could actually watch Clint's patients disappear like water down a drain. Then came the scene that broke everything. The emotional breakdown scene. It was supposed to be this raw moment where DiCaprio's character completely falls apart. And Leo absolutely nailed it on the first take, like seriously nailed it. Raw, real, perfect. Everybody on set knew it. The room went dead silent. Clint quietly said the scene was perfect and called cut. But Leo wanted another take, then another one, then another one after that. By the sixth take, Clint wasn't even behind the camera anymore. He was over by the craft services table, just leaning there with his coffee in hand. Stone-faced, not saying a word, just watching. Someone asked if he was okay, and he just muttered something about how DiCaprio was still searching for something Clint had already found. Every additional take felt like torture to him, like being back in that Spanish desert with Sergio Leone all over again. Except this time he was the director. He was supposed to be in control, and some actor was dragging him back into that hell he'd escaped from 40 years earlier. When filming finally wrapped, there was just this heavy silence, the kind of silence that says everything without words. That's Clint's specialty. After that, whenever DiCaprio's name came up in casting meetings for future projects, Clint would just shake his head. He'd say Leo was a great actor, sure, but not his kind of actor. They never reunited after J. Edgar, never shared a stage, never exchanged another word. Leo eventually got his Oscar years later for The Revenant, but he never got another call from Clint Eastwood. Not even a conversation. Because for Clint, perfection isn't about doing something over and over until you get it right. It's about trusting your instinct enough to do it once and then moving on with your life. It's about not wasting another single second chasing something you already caught. But one man pushed Clint Eastwood too far that had earned his hatred forever. Number 5. Michael Moore. It all started way back in 2005 at the National Board of Review Awards. Clint was on stage accepting something or presenting something, and out of absolutely nowhere, he said something that made the entire room go completely silent. He said if Michael Moore ever showed up at his door with a camera, he would kill him. Just like that. Dead serious tone. No smile, no wink. People in the audience laughed nervously because they desperately wanted it to be a joke. They needed it to be a joke. But Clint wasn't laughing. He just stared straight ahead, with that stone face he's famous for, and walked off stage. That wasn't humor. That wasn't some clever Hollywood roast. That was a warning shot fired across the bow. And that was the exact moment Moore's name first appeared on the list. In pencil at first, sure, but it was definitely there. So why did Clint hate him so intensely? You have to understand what these two men fundamentally stand for. They're basically polar opposites in every way that matters. Clint represents old-school American values: discipline, quiet service, honor, duty. The kind of guy who thinks soldiers are heroes who deserve respect and gratitude, not political analysis or criticism. The kind of guy who believes some things are sacred and shouldn't be used as props in documentaries. Moore, on the other hand, makes these loud documentaries that Clint saw as pure political grandstanding, especially Fahrenheit 9/11. To Clint, Moore's films weren't really about seeking truth or educating people. They were about making noise, getting attention, turning real soldiers and real sacrifices into talking points for a political agenda. It made his blood boil. Clint once told a close friend that Moore sees soldiers as pawns in some big political chess game, just pieces to move around to make his point. But Clint sees them as heroes, real human beings who risk absolutely everything for their country, who leave their families, who come home broken or don't come home at all. And that fundamental difference in perspective, that wasn't something they could just politely agree to disagree about over coffee. That was a canyon between them, an unbridgeable gap. Then, in 2014, almost a full decade after that awards show threat, Moore went and did the one thing absolutely guaranteed to make it permanent. He mocked American Sniper online, went on Twitter, and wrote this comparison between Clint's film and the Nazi sniper movie in Inglourious Basterds. said his uncle was killed by a sniper in World War II, and snipers weren't heroes. They were cowards. Moore insisted later it was just a casual observation, just a joke, just him sharing a personal memory. But Clint's people said he was absolutely livid when he saw it, fuming, shaking with anger. And here's what you need to understand about Clint Eastwood. He doesn't forget insults, ever. He just deletes the people who made them, completely erases them from his universe like they never existed. That tweet took Moore's name from pencil to permanent marker, from maybe someday to absolutely never in this lifetime. One longtime collaborator explained it perfectly. Clint doesn't hold grudges out of spite or wounded ego or petty anger. He holds them out of pure efficiency, cold calculation. Why would he waste even 5 minutes of his remaining life on someone who publicly disrespected everything he holds sacred? In his personal cost-benefit analysis, Moore failed catastrophically, irredeemably. Since that tweet, Moore's name has been completely eliminated from Clint's orbit. Gone, vanished. Eastwood has worked with liberals and conservatives throughout his entire career. He genuinely doesn't care about your politics if you show up on time, do good work, and treat people with basic respect. But he draws a hard line at anyone who mocks soldiers, especially American soldiers who died serving their country. And Moore didn't just cross that line. He spit on it, laughed at it, made a deliberate joke out of it. Today, if you mention Michael Moore's name anywhere within earshot of Clint Eastwood, the conversation just ends. Immediate dead silence. Category 3. The Traitors. Moore's name sits right at the top of that list in bold letters. And once you're locked into Category 3, there's no appeal process. No way to apologize your way out. No path back to redemption. You're just permanently deleted from his world. But Moore isn't the only person who discovered that Clint's legendary patience has very real limits. There's another name that makes his jaw physically tighten even after 9 decades in Hollywood. A woman who represented everything Clint despised about the new generation of filmmakers. And their decades-long feud became one of the coldest, most brutal wars the industry has ever quietly witnessed. Number 4. Barbra Streisand. If there's one name that makes Clint Eastwood's jaw tighten even after 9 decades in Hollywood, it's Barbra Streisand. She's the one who got under his skin so deeply that he still refuses to say her name in interviews. Their feud became one of Hollywood's coldest wars. And it never ended. Not even close. Their war started back in the early 1980s when both of them were making the jump from acting to directing. And right away, it was obvious they had completely opposite philosophies about filmmaking. Streisand was already famous for being an absolute control freak on set. 40 takes, 50 takes, sometimes 60 takes just to capture one single expression. One look, one tiny moment. She'd shoot the same scene over and over and over until she felt it was absolutely perfect. Meanwhile, Clint was running his sets the complete opposite way. 2 takes maximum, then you move on. Done. Next scene. His whole philosophy was brutally simple. If it's not real the first time, it's not worth filming. To him, Barbra represented everything wrong with the new Hollywood. The endless need for control. The vanity. The overthinking that completely sucks all the life and spontaneity out of a performance. She wasn't just a perfectionist. She was perfectionism gone insane. By the early 1990s, their different approaches had turned into open hatred. Not the loud, explosive kind that makes headlines, the cold, dangerous kind that lasts forever. In 1992, Streisand directed The Prince of Tides. It was actually a pretty solid film. Critics liked it. Audiences liked it. But she didn't get nominated for Best Director at the Oscars. And apparently Clint was overheard making a brutal comment to a friend at some Hollywood party. He said maybe if she made decisions faster, she'd actually finish more than 3 films in 15 years. Ouch! That comment spread through Hollywood faster than wildfire. Everyone heard about it within days. And that was basically Clint publicly humiliating her, calling her out for being so obsessed with perfection that she could barely finish anything. It wasn't just criticism, it was a calculated insult designed to hurt. But the real breaking point came with Bridges of Madison County. This was the film that ended whatever microscopic piece of respect still existed between them. Streisand had been attached to direct it for years. It was supposed to be her big sweeping romantic drama, her emotional masterpiece, the film that would finally prove she was a serious director. But she couldn't make up her mind about anything, couldn't commit to a vision, kept overthinking every single detail until finally she just dropped out completely. And that's when Clint swooped in, like a hawk spotting prey. He took the project right out from under her, rewrote the script his way, and delivered a quiet, emotional masterpiece in probably a fraction of the time Streisand would have needed. The film was beautiful, subtle, honest, and real. It earned Meryl Streep an Oscar nomination, and it was Clint's ultimate revenge, without him having to say a single word about Barbara. He just proved his philosophy worked better than hers. That speed and instinct beat control and endless overthinking every single time. Since then, they've avoided each other completely. Not just professionally. We're talking completely. They don't attend the same events, don't sit on the same panels, don't show up at the same parties. If they're both invited somewhere, one of them mysteriously doesn't show up. She became the living, breathing symbol of everything he despised in filmmaking. Hesitation, control, fear, the death of instinct. His code has always been simple and clear. Pull the trigger once, not 50 times. Ask any employee who's ever worked at Malpaso Productions. They'll tell you the same thing. Barbra Streisand's name is the one that makes Clint's face go completely stone cold. She didn't just earn his hatred. She became the reason he decided some people aren't worth forgiving. But Streisand wasn't the only alpha who thought they could challenge the cowboy on his own set. There was another legendary actor who believed he could match Clint's intensity, who thought 2 tough guys could share the same space. And their showdown became the stuff of Hollywood legend. Number 3. Tommy Lee Jones. The first day Tommy Lee Jones walked onto the set of In the Line of Fire in 1993, Clint Eastwood supposedly leaned over to a crew member and said something that turned out to be prophetic. 2 bulls in 1 pen. This won't last. And he was absolutely right. At first, everyone in Hollywood thought they'd be perfect together. The ultimate tough guy pairing. 2 legendary actors who didn't take garbage from anyone. The kind of collaboration that should have resulted in pure magic on screen. But behind the camera, their partnership wasn't magic at all. It was a power struggle. A silent war between 2 men who both refused to back down. Here's the fundamental problem. Tommy Lee Jones wasn't the type to take quiet direction and move on like a professional. He barked back at directors. He argued about every little detail. He rewrote his own lines on the spot without asking permission. And worst of all, he kept performing long after Clint yelled, "Cut!" Like the scene wasn't actually over just because the director said so. For someone like Clint, who runs his sets calmly, efficiently, and silently, watching Jones work was torture. Crew members said Jones would stay in character between takes, just standing there in full intensity mode, still feeling whatever emotion his character was supposed to feel. And Clint would just stare at him with this look of complete confusion, like he was watching an alien from another planet. Why are you still doing this? The cameras aren't even rolling anymore. We're done. Move on." But the real explosion came during a heated confrontation scene between them. Jones towered over Clint, fully locked into his character, spitting every single line with pure, concentrated venom. The intensity was absolutely real. Maybe too real. Way too real. The director yelled, "Cut. Scene's over. Time to reset for the next one." But Jones didn't stop. He kept going, kept glaring straight into Eastwood's eyes like they were actually mortal enemies in real life. The entire crew froze solid. Nobody knew what to do or where to look. After what felt like an eternity, Clint whispered something quietly to his assistant standing nearby. Life's too short for that kind of theater. Then, he just calmly walked off set. Didn't storm off dramatically. Didn't yell or make a scene. Just walked away like he had somewhere better to be. And that whisper was the exact moment their professional relationship died. From that point forward, the decision was made and set in stone. When casting directors brought up Jones's name for future Eastwood projects, Clint didn't even hesitate or think about it. He'd say Jones was a great actor, truly talented and professional in his own way. But they don't speak the same language. And everyone who worked with Clint knew exactly what that phrase meant. It meant never again. It meant the conversation was over before it started. They never reunited after that film. Never shared a panel at an award show. Never did interviews together. Never even mentioned each other's names in public. In Clint Eastwood's world, there's only room for one alpha on any set, and he's always the one calling cut. But if you think Jones was difficult to work with, wait until you hear about the drunk who almost made Clint lose his legendary composure completely. This happened way back when Clint was still young and learning exactly what kind of actors he'd refused to tolerate. And this guy became the ultimate cautionary tale. Number 2. Richard Burton. Clint Eastwood doesn't lose his temper easily. In fact, most people who've worked with him say they've never seen him truly angry. But Richard Burton came dangerously close to making it happen. And this was way back in 1968 on the set of Where Eagles Dare. Years before Clint had the power to fire people or walk away from projects. Years before he became the legend who could choose exactly who he worked with. This wasn't about ego or fame or some artistic disagreement about how to play a scene. It was about something much more basic. Work ethic. Plain and simple. Burton would show up late to set almost every single day. When he finally arrived, he'd be slurring his lines, forgetting his marks, sometimes even smelling like an entire bar from the night before. Meanwhile, Clint was already dressed in full costume and ready to work at dawn. Standing there, waiting, watching Burton stumble through take after take like he was sleepwalking. One crew member said you could literally see the respect draining from Clint's face, like water circling a drain. It happened slowly over weeks, but it was obvious to everyone on set. Whatever admiration Clint might have had for Burton's talent at the beginning was completely gone by the end. Burton was right in the middle of his famously stormy marriage to Elizabeth Taylor at the time, and apparently every single night ended in a bar somewhere. Drinking until dawn, fighting, making up, then drinking some more. Every morning, the entire crew paid the price for his lifestyle. They'd stand around for hours waiting for him to show up, resetting lights, rehearsing scenes without the lead actor, killing time. All because Burton couldn't get his life together enough to be professional. And here's the thing about Clint. He didn't yell at Burton. He didn't lecture him about responsibility or try to save him or have some heart-to-heart conversation about getting sober. He just waited, cold, silent, stone-faced, and increasingly disgusted. This was early in Clint's career when he was still just an actor himself, not yet a director with real power. So he absorbed it all, stored it away, let it build up inside him. After Burton blew the same line for about the 10th time in one afternoon, Clint supposedly muttered something under his breath, loud enough for people nearby to hear. "I'm getting paid by the picture, not by the hour." The crew laughed nervously because it was genuinely funny. But Burton didn't laugh at all. He knew exactly what Clint meant. That wasn't a joke. It was a judgment. That one sentence contained a whole philosophy about professionalism and respect that would eventually define Eastwood's entire career. But the absolute final straw came when Burton was overheard backstage calling the movie a paycheck job. Just some dumb action flick he was doing for the money. Nothing serious. Nothing that deserved his full effort or attention. To Clint, that comment was the ultimate insult, the ultimate slap in the face. Clint Eastwood believed something fundamental about filmmaking. Every single film deserves full commitment. Every project deserves respect. Even action movies, even westerns, even the commercial projects that aren't trying to win Oscars or change the world. Everything you put your name on deserves your best effort. Years later, someone asked Clint about working with Richard Burton, and his answer was brutal in its simplicity and honesty. Talented guy, wasted talent. That's all he said. That's all he ever needed to say. 4 words that summed up everything. The film ended up being a huge hit and made tons of money. But their relationship died on that set and never came back to life. They never worked together again, never spoke about each other in interviews again. Burton's fate was sealed by Clint's silence. And as we've learned throughout this story, silence is always Clint Eastwood's sharpest and most devastating weapon. But Burton wasn't the only one who broke Clint's patience through complete unprofessionalism. There was one more name, a woman whose emotional fragility and chaos on set made Clint swear he'd never mix sympathy with work again. And her tragic ending is the only one that ever made Clint question whether his cold philosophy went too far. Number 1. John Seberg. Clint Eastwood doesn't talk about paint your wagon anymore, like at all. And if you push him and ask why, the answer always comes back to the same person. Jean Seberg. She wasn't just his co-star in the 1969 musical. She was the reason he swore he'd never mix sympathy with work again. Never try to save someone. Never make excuses for unprofessional behavior just because someone's going through a hard time. But here's what makes Seberg's story different from all the others on this list. She's the only one who made Clint question whether his philosophy was too harsh, whether maybe he should have been more understanding. Not question it enough to actually change anything or reach out, but question it quietly in his own mind. And for Clint Eastwood, that's as close to doubt as he ever gets. Seberg was fragile when they started filming, emotionally unpredictable. She was already under FBI surveillance for her political activism, which added this whole layer of paranoia and stress to everything. On set, her emotions were absolutely all over the place. One day, she'd light up the room with her smile and charm the entire crew. The next day, she'd lock herself in her trailer for hours, and nobody could convince her to come out. Not the director, not the producers, nobody. Clint was the complete opposite of that chaos, focused like a laser, punctual to the minute, allergic to any kind of drama or emotional scenes behind the camera. By week 3 of filming, he'd completely had enough. He tried to be patient at first, really tried to be kind and understanding about whatever she was going through. But his patience had limits. It always does. A script supervisor who was there remembered how Seberg would stop right in the middle of scenes to ask deep questions about her character's motivation. Why am I saying this line exactly? What does my character really want in this moment? What's her emotional journey? And Clint would just stand there staring at the floor, not saying a word, waiting for her to finish talking so they could get back to work. But you could see it in his face. He was dying inside, slowly losing his mind, wondering why something simple had to become so incredibly complicated. The atmosphere on that set was tense and uncomfortable for everyone. People walking on eggshells around Seberg's unpredictable moods. But Clint kept his mouth shut, did his job every day, got through it one scene at a time. He probably thought once filming finally wrapped, he'd never have to deal with her again. He could just move on to the next project and forget the whole experience. But then, Paint Your Wagon bombed hard at the box office. It was a complete disaster. Lost tons of money. Got terrible reviews. And that's when Jean Seberg made the mistake that Clint could never forgive. She started doing interviews with reporters and basically blamed the entire failure on him. Said his wooden performance dragged the whole movie down. Said he couldn't sing or dance well enough. Basically threw him under the bus publicly to protect her own reputation. To Clint, that was betrayal of the absolute worst kind. She was criticizing a colleague publicly after he'd spent months trying to hold the production together. After he'd been patient with all her chaos and emotional breakdowns. After he'd dealt with her constant questioning and her unpredictability and her drama. And this was how she repaid that patience? By publicly humiliating him to save herself? From that exact moment, she was completely done in his eyes. He never mentioned her name again. If anyone brought her up in conversation, he'd immediately change the subject, light a cigar, walk away. The full cold silence treatment. Then, in 1979, news broke that Jean Seberg had died. Really tragic circumstances, a genuinely sad ending to a troubled and difficult life. And Clint stayed completely silent about it. Didn't attend any memorial service, didn't send flowers to her family. But friends who were close to him said he looked genuinely sad when he first heard the news, like it actually hurt him somewhere deep down. But even that sadness never turned into forgiveness. So now you know all 6 names. 6 people who betrayed Clint Eastwood in different ways at different times. But the real question isn't really about them anymore. It's about him, about his philosophy, about whether cutting people out of your life forever is strength or something much colder and darker. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.